most people think about Oregon, they immediately think about Portland. And if they even consider Salem, a lot of people think Portland and Salem are similar, just one's bigger and one's smaller. And that is absolutely the furthest thing from the truth. Some people absolutely thrive in Portland and feel trapped in Salem. And honestly, other people move to Salem and say they'd never go back to Portland or even consider moving to Portland in the first place. So in this video, I'm going to break down the real lifestyle differences between Portland and Salem, including cost of living, traffic, culture, pace of life, safety, personality types, and which city tends to fit different stages of your life best. And later in this video, I'm going to explain the one big difference that surprises people the most after they move to Salem. We're first going to start off talking about the overall feel of each city. Now, we'll start off with the obvious, where Portland is a much larger city than Salem, but it's more than just big city versus small city. Portland has this laid-back, creative, and self-proclaimed weird identity connected to the city. The vibe of Portland can probably be best described as like a mix of Pacific Northwest rustic, artsy, indie wonderland, and a tight-knit community. There is definitely this do-it-yourself ethic, kind of this independence from a mainstream trends. It has its own trends, really, and generally considered pretty progressive there. Portland in general has more of an identity-based culture. And yes, there are subcultures within Portland because there are different pocket neighborhoods. There's even different cities that make up the general area of Portland. Now compare that to Salem, Oregon, where Salem feels more grounded, more practical, certainly a lot quieter. It's a little bit more routine-oriented and definitely more residential. People in Salem are also do-it-yourselfers, except it just feels a little bit more grounded and less more about, hey, flash, look at me, I can do it myself. Salem just kind of gets down to business. Portland feels more like a city that people experience, and Salem feels like a city where people actually live in. And that lifestyle difference starts affecting people immediately once daily life kicks in. Just a simple comparison of the downtown feels. When you go to Portland, you've got much taller buildings, and one of the biggest aspects that affects your daily life is the actual pace of life, your pace of lifestyle in each of these cities. Let's start off with the pace of life in Portland. Now, I mentioned it has this laid-back, weird vibe. It still has a very high social energy. There is certainly a lot more stimulation going on in Portland, especially the downtown area and the immediate surrounding areas of downtown. There's just more visually stimulating. There's a lot more congestion. The roads are busier. It's certainly a denser environment. You feel a little bit restricted and tight when you're going and moving around the Portland area. Now, with that said, there's certainly a lot more entertainment, a lot more nightlife that occurs in Portland, and a lot more options when it comes to those types of entertainment venues. Part of people's lifestyle and the pace of life in Portland is being out there, being on the scene, being part of that weird energy. Part of the pace of life in Portland is keeping up with the local trends, keeping up with all of the social activities and social events going on in Portland, just keeping up with the weird energy that Portland has. There's this kind of extra pressure that comes with living in Portland, especially the heart of Portland. Now, the opposite is true for Salem, Oregon. There is a lot less pressure to keep up with many trends here because we're not really a big trend-setting city in Salem, Oregon. Now, there's a lot of culture that's continuing to flow into Salem around some events and culinary experiences, but there's not this pressure to keep it up with those trends. Salem definitely has quieter evenings. Things don't stay open nearly as late as they do in Portland. We have less options, again, for those bigger venues and entertainment venues, so the evenings tend to be quieter. Our downtown shuts down a lot earlier than Portland would. And with all that said, though, it just contributes to a much calmer atmosphere. And with that calmer atmosphere comes a much easier day-to-day life. We have a lot less congestion. We're battling a lot less for parking spaces, even when you go to community events, because both Portland and Salem have massive community vibes and big events that the community really rally to. But the difference is when you're in Portland, it feels like you're shoulder to shoulder with people and you're fighting crowds, you're fighting parking, you're walking a lot longer to get to these events. Whereas in Salem, it's just as much well attended, but you just feel a sense of space. It's just a more space to breathe when you're here in Salem. Now, if you ask residents from Portland and Salem, both will tell you that they feel very connected to nature. However, if you've ever been to Portland or if you've just seen Portland in general, it doesn't feel as natural as Salem does. Salem is literally surrounded by countryside, farmland, and wineries. And if you look at Portland, that's not necessarily the case. Now, while you do have great access to nature in Portland, to me it is not matched to what you have here in Salem. And I think people feel a little bit more connected to nature, a little bit more connected to the farm community when you're here in Salem versus Portland. A lot of people don't realize how much mental energy big city living requires until they leave it. Now, this I can relate to personally because I moved from Los Angeles, a massive city, much bigger than Portland, and I moved to Salem, Oregon. Now, I didn't even know that I was caught up in this constant vibe, this constant wanting to keep up with the Joneses, this constant wanting to keep up with the trends, and this high energy that the big cities have to offer. I didn't realize how much that was affecting my day-to-day lifestyle and how much it was affecting me mentally. I absolutely felt in my core that I needed to slow it down, but I didn't realize how much I needed that until I made the move to Salem, Oregon. My sense of pressure had lowered, my anxiety has lowered, my calmness has increased, and is exactly what I was looking for. But it really depends on your personality, and that slower pace of life can feel extremely peaceful or painfully boring. I do these videos because there's just not a lot of information about Salem. Everyone hears about Portland. It's easy to research. Lots of YouTube videos about Portland, but there's just not a lot going on about Salem. And I'm also a local real estate agent, and I relocated here. I'm not a local to Salem, but I understand what that relocation process takes. And so I can relate to a lot of what you're going through and what maybe some of the questions that you have. And so if you are thinking about moving to Salem, buying a home, make sure you're reaching out to me at the contact information popping up. And I'd love to hear from you and guide you through your relocation journey. We're going to talk about the person who usually prefers living and being in Portland. And a lot of it has to do with wanting that faster pace, wanting that higher energy, wanting to be part of the latest trends, and wanting to be part of a bigger cultural and nightlife scene. People in Portland often feel like they're very connected to the creative scene, the art scene, the music scene. It's people who want to be immersed right in that type of culture and lifestyle. The people that thrive in Portland are people that really want the constant activity, the constant energy, the constant buzz. It's a very social city. Now, Salem can be very social too. It's just in a very different way. So Portland does attract people who want to be part of the social scene. It also attracts people like young professionals. Now, there's a lot more opportunities when it comes to profession in Portland when you compare it to Salem. And that's what drives a lot of people to a bigger city like Portland, because there's just more work opportunities, maybe more career opportunities, more opportunities in more fields. And so that's a big reason why people end up choosing Portland as well. And the options that you have in Portland don't stop with just career and jobs. It actually expands more into your daily lifestyle. There's more options for a good food scene. There's more options for events, especially large scale venues. There's more options for cultural activities like museums and zoos and those types of places. There's just more to do in Portland, and there's a much higher energy that comes with doing more in a city. And that leads us to people who prefer living in Salem, like myself, who want more of a stress-free life, a lot more calmer lifestyle, a calmer pace. That's the type of energy that Salem has. People living in Salem are less concerned with the local trends. They're less concerned with making sure they're part of these massive events or massive big venues. They don't really prioritize a nightlife energy or that type of entertainment scene. It's a different priority when living in Salem. People who end up moving to Salem and staying here and living in Salem, they're prioritizing more of a simplicity and adding and not adding the complexity that Portland would offer, or a big city would offer in general. I know for me personally, I wanted to raise my kids outside of a big city. So for me and my family, we wanted that slower pace, the slower energy. We didn't want our kids to be exposed to certain elements that you'd find in Portland or that big city lifestyle. So for us, our priorities were a little different of what we wanted our kids to be exposed to. And we're very comfortable how our kids are growing up in Salem. And I would also say people that choose Salem want to be more in that Central Oregon vibe, and being centrally located. In Salem, you've got the best of all worlds. It's people that love being able to go to the Cascade Mountains within a couple of hours, go into Portland if they have some cool event to go to or want to hit up the zoo or maybe a trendy restaurant once in a while, and also get over to the coast, which is about an hour and a half away to the west, and also being really close to Eugene, being an hour and a half away too, or Corvallis, which is an hour away if you want kind of that college life, that college vibe experience as well. I also find that people in Salem tend to really appreciate, enjoy that kind of that farm to table lifestyle, and I think that has a lot to do with being surrounded by the farmland that I mentioned before. There's this connection between this farm community and the city of Salem, and there's this nice intertwining and blend that really, to me, expands the culture, expands who you work with and who you live around, and just really adds another element that you're not going to find in Portland. Where Portland has that city vibe, I find that Salem has a combination of rural and suburban feel versus that higher energy urban feel that Portland offers. Now, I've heard from some people saying, hey, if you choose Salem over Portland, it's because you just really want a downgrade of Portland, and that's not the case at all. I said it before, it really comes down to wanting more simplicity, and that's really the bottom line for people that are choosing, the people that thrive and want to be in Salem. And when it becomes really obvious is when you compare the two cities' daily conveniences. Your daily lifestyle in Portland and Salem couldn't be any more different. And when you're living in Portland, you're just going to have to deal with getting around a much larger city that's not exactly the easiest to navigate. There are several bridges that cross the Willamette River. If you make the wrong turn somewhere, you're stuck on that bridge. You got to cross over the river, find another exit, or find another bridge to come over. Now, that's not to say that Portland doesn't have these neighborhoods and cities on the outskirts where it's a bit easier to navigate. But one thing does hold true for whether you're more in the city center or in the outskirts of Portland, that you're going to be dealing with massive amounts of congestion. It takes a lot longer to get to places. And again, if you're living in Portland, one of the big reasons is because you like that downtown Portland energy and you want to be a part of what it has to offer. So you are going to have to deal with getting in and out of more of that city center. Or if you're trying to cross towns, go into enjoying some of the cultural events or some of the events throughout Portland, you are going to have to cross towns and cross bridges and just be stuck in traffic. And it's a lot harder to park in Portland when you go to these events and these different venues. And not just the events and bigger venues, but your day-to-day lifestyle events like going to the grocery store, going to the mall, going to shopping centers, just getting around and finding parking and getting places. Because it's so much more congested and because it's so much more dense, you're going to be dealing with a lot more people, which adds a lot more time to your daily routine, which can then lead to a lot more stress. Now, with all of that said, you do have a lot of options in Portland, and that's the cool thing about Portland is if you want a certain type of food, you've got tons of options to choose from. Different types of entertainment venues, different types of variety, and variety is really the key in Portland. There's just a lot to choose from. However, my experience with big cities is while there's a lot of options, a lot of variety, a lot to choose from, a lot of people end up falling into kind of a routine. You find your favorite restaurants, you find your favorite places to shop, and you pretty much frequent those areas. And yeah, if you're like me, you do like to experience new things. However, that amount of options, it's not like you're hitting them all for the most part. There's kind of this illusion of options because, again, when it comes to your daily life, your daily routine, you're pretty much heading to certain parts of town consistently over and over again. While there's a lot out there, a lot of people don't take full advantage of that and experience all of that. Now let's compare it to Salem, Oregon, where people in Salem experience just a calmer day-to-day routine. There's less congestion to deal with. It's much easier to run errands. You don't have to plan around massive traffic. You don't have to plan around being stuck in traffic. You don't have to add extra time and factor in these types of things when living in Salem. It's so much easier to navigate. And there's only one bridge, and you're only crossing that bridge if you pretty much live or work in West Salem. Outside of that, you don't need to deal with any of that. So if you make a wrong turn, it's much easier to fix a mistake. I can't tell you how many times I go to things in Portland because, again, I do like to experience some big city things that you make a wrong turn in Portland and you're figuring out 20 minutes later how to correct that turn because it's not easy to navigate and much more traffic. Comparing it to Salem, so much more easier to navigate. And I just find that your day-to-day routines in Salem are just so much more simplified. A big contributing factor to that simplified lifestyles, we just have fewer amenities, fewer options. Now, people may feel like that's a bad thing. And that's not to say we only have one or two restaurants for different types of cuisines or only one shopping area. We're not a small town. We're much smaller than Portland, but in the reality is we're a mid-sized city. And we do have options. We just don't have nearly as many options that you would experience in Portland. So some people may feel like that's limiting. For me, it just makes things a lot easier. I find my favorite places here, and that's where I go. When I want to try a new place, I explore it, discover it. And as I said, there are more and more things coming into Salem as more and more people are choosing to live in the city of Salem. As someone that lived in a big city, I can tell you my daily routine is so much simpler. I don't have to find myself using mental acrobats of how I'm going to navigate the city or how I'm going to get from point A to point B, and I just know where I'm going. I rarely have to use any type of mapping device on my phone like Waze or Google Maps. I just know where I'm going. It's easy to get to, and that just adds so much levity. I have so much less stress to my daily life, my daily routines, that I'm actually happier for it. I'm someone who used to think that traffic was no big deal because I was so used to it living in a big city. Now when I head into Portland, I get stuck in traffic. It drives me insane. I'm like, I don't know how people do it. I don't get it. I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to travel an hour just to get, a handful of miles. It just doesn't make sense to me. I also like that Salem is fairly gridded out. It's kind of like a square. You've got a lot of easy north-south streets crossing east-west streets. There's not a lot of crazy turns and windiness, and it just everything's so much simpler here. So by now at this point in the video, you're probably realizing which city connects with you more, which city feels like it's going to be more attuned to your day-to-day lifestyle or your lifestyle in general. Now this next section is going to be pretty short because I don't want to get into the details here. You can find some of the details on some of my other videos that I have here on the channel. We're going to talk about affordability, especially when it comes to housing. Salem will definitely be more affordable. You can get a lot more house for your dollar here in Salem. You get more space here in Salem, and you just have more options when it comes to housing and combined with affordability in Salem, Oregon. Portland, because it's a larger city, you're going to be spending a lot more money. You may be more restricted to certain areas and neighborhoods that aren't really meeting your lifestyle because of the affordability rate there. Now, Portland is a large city and has a lot of many suburban areas and a lot of other smaller cities connected to the general greater area of Portland that will have its own sub-housing markets. Some are a lot more affordable than others. But in general, people that are looking for a lot more affordability, looking for more space, and again, more housing for your money, Salem is a no-brainer. It's definitely going to outdo Portland any day of the week. And that's just, again, when you're comparing big city, cost of living is always going to be more expensive. And again, if you want more information about cost of living, I've got cost of living videos on my channel. It specifically talks about housing and other things that add and contribute to your day-to-day costs. Now we're going to talk about something that kind of surprises people, catches people off guard when they're either choosing Salem or choosing Portland. And it's something that certainly affected me and my family. Now, when my family and I moved from a bigger city to Salem, there were some adjustments that we needed to make. And I thought I was ready emotionally and mentally, but the reality was it took a little while for me to actually kind of let go and connect, feel part of Salem. And that is, I just wasn't used to the slower pace. Again, I made the move to Salem because I knew in my core I wanted to slow it down. I didn't want to be part of that big energy and that vibe that a large city has to offer. But it's something that I was so used to. I spent most of my life in that type of environment. And for a long time, it made sense for me. I thrived in it. I loved it. But as my lifestyles and my priorities changed, I know I needed to make a change. But when I got to Salem, there was a part of me that was not feeling comfortable. I wasn't comfortable in a slower pace. I wasn't comfortable not battling which lane I needed to be into. I wasn't comfortable not being around a ton of people. It was just weird transition phase. And even though, again, I know I needed it and wanted it, it took a big adjustment. And for me, I was missing some of the spontaneous events that would happen in big cities. I was missing some of that cultural vibe and being part of a cultural hub and part of the trends. I was missing a lot of that at first. And then I started letting it go and reminding myself that that's not something I really wanted to be a part of, and how much added stress that was causing my life and then affecting my family. And so after I let go of all of that and really took in what Salem had to offer, I've become so much more adjusted. I feel much more emotionally calmer. I'm not doing mental acrobats and gymnastics in my head of trying to figure out how to navigate a city. And I actually feel more connected to a city than I ever felt living in Los Angeles or any big city that I've been to. Now let's talk about some of the emotional adjustments that you're gonna have to make moving from Salem to Portland. Now I don't have that direct experience because I've never lived in Portland, but I can tell you from people that have made the move from Salem to Portland or smaller cities to Portland in general, there's an adjustment there too. More conveniences, more cultural activities, cultural events, cultural hubs. It wasn't easy for them to just start enjoying all of that big city life and big city vibe because they weren't used to it. They weren't used to what comes with all of that, and that is a higher stress level, constant movement, and again, that just kind of can sap the energy out of you because it's a lot more mental stimulation. And not to say that it's always going to feel that way from people moving from Salem to Portland or a small city to Portland. It just may take some adjustments. It's almost like your body and brain have to align to a newer energy, a faster energy, and that could take some time to get used to. It's really not about which city is better. It's really about which city connects with you, where you are in your lifestyle, and what you need in your day-to-day life. If you are considering making a move to Salem or the surrounding areas and wanting to buy a house, make sure you're reaching out to my contact information popping up. Again, I'm Dave Fine with the Real Estate Dads at eXp Realty. I love helping people move to and relocate to the city because I did it myself. It's why I do these videos, is to help you get a better idea and a better sense of what your lifestyle will be like in Salem. Now, if you're watching this video and realize Salem is just not going to be a right fit for you, you can still reach out to me. I know some great real estate agents in Portland I'm happy to put you in connection with, and they will tell you and show you everything that you want to know about the city of Portland.